begins to get you to open up to being able to see magic and stopping that busyness and like, oh, I haven't got time for magic, you know. What else have you got time for, you know? What do you think you're going to be thinking about on your deathbed? All the jobs you got done, how you ticked off your to-do list? No, you're going to be having those flashes of those magical moments, because that's what you'll be going into, is the realm of magic and deeper and beyond. It's the mystery. Hello friends, John Dalton here for the Emergence podcast, where we go into love, consciousness and the mystery. And in this episode we're going into being present, taking yourself off the hook, 21-day Enlightenment Retreat on the island of Madiera, the significance of the left and right of your body, spreading light even though you've come through darkness, having a calm life, noticing the magic all around you, and letting go of certainty. So in response to the question I put on Instagram, what's the biggest challenge you're facing in your spiritual life at the moment? This person wrote, trying to be present. It's like I'm so into daily life tasks that I forget to be present. Really easy to feel like that. But really what the person is talking about is about being conscious of being present, which is a different thing, because we're actually present all the time. It's just a matter of whether we're conscious of it or not. So that's helpful, because it's very easy to kind of go, oh, where did the time go? Or where did the day go? Where did the life go? I wasn't present. I was just away in my head and that kind of thing. And to sort of give yourself a hard time about it. So it's very helpful to realize that, you know, like when you're playing a game or you're in what they call the flow state, you're not conscious of being present, and yet you're very present, and yet the time just passes very fast. So don't give yourself a hard time about it. I think you're also talking about momentum, because existence is designed to be compelling and absorbing, which is great. But if you feel like you are not giving as much attention to your inner space as your outer space, then you need to sort of break up the momentum. I go into this on the meditation training quite a bit. And one of the things I encourage people to do is set a little alarm for themselves. Little alarm every hour and a half, thereabouts. And yes, they can meditate, but the main thing is to break up the momentum. Because if you're in the middle of doing something and a little alarm goes off, and you're like, what's the alarm for? Well, the alarm is to kind of remind you that this is all an illusion, or to remind you to go inward and just check in with yourself. To feel the beautiful, lovely sensation inside your body, to have some nice breaths, that kind of thing. And if you keep doing that throughout the day, it stops the merry-go-round, it stops the wheel of thinking, and it stops the momentum of existence. It just puts a little brake on it. And that's really helpful for helping you to come back and to remember or to realize that you are actually present, that you're present in every moment. You just maybe are not conscious of it. I had another question. This person emailed me and they said, "Hi John, you've talked before about taking yourself off the hook. Would you mind sharing more about this, i.e. what it means to take yourself off the hook? Was it a gradual mind change, a series of breaking habits, or just a revelation, like a transmission, where you just got it? Hope that makes sense. I often think that all we need is within our reach. We just need to change our perspective, and it's apparent. It's just making the right change and how to work out what that is. Thanks for everything you do." So what they're talking about there is enlightenment, or my experience of enlightenment as I talked about it before, which happened a long time ago in 1996. And in it, I often describe it as taking myself off the hook. And the hook that I was on was enlightenment. When I first heard about enlightenment, probably a bit like you, there was something about it that I thought, you know, that sounds great, that sounds really cool. But back then it was like, you know, a legend or a myth, you know. And then the process was of kind of realizing, oh no, this is a real thing. This is something that people can actually do. and there are people alive who are enlightened, and let me find out more about these people and let me get closer and closer. And eventually I found somebody who was enlightened, who said they were enlightened, which made a big difference for me to, that they actually said it rather than sort of batting their eyelids and going, oh, well, it's not cool to say you're enlightened. Because that's one of the things about the whole in the spiritual life. It's like, oh, you can't say you're enlightened because it's not cool. And if you say you're enlightened, you probably aren't, And so it was great for me to come across someone who said they were. And I spent I tried to get as close to them as possible, meaning to get in proximity to them, hoping it would kind of rub off on me. And then in '96, I came across another enlightened person, and it did rub off on me, and I got enlightened. And it was everything, all the kind of cliches, everything changed and nothing changed. So it's hard for me to kind of say. I mean, one of the things I realized was that enlightenment it's an inside job, meaning it's got nothing to do with anybody else. There's no blood test. There's no, written exam. There's not like, it's personal, very personal. And really it's a case of, did you get what enlightenment meant for you? Because I know when I started hearing about enlightenment, it was like, walking on water, flying, magic tricks, perpetually happy, blissful, all that kind of stuff. And then over time it was like, yeah, it'd be nice to levitate, yeah, it'd be nice to do this, it'd be nice to do this other thing, but it doesn't really matter. It's not really the thing I'm after. And what it kept coming down to more and more and more was this fundamental lack of doubt that these people had. There was something that they had that I knew I didn't have, or I thought I didn't have, and then I was wanting to get closer and closer, and so that I did not have that too. And getting enlightened for me, that was the hook, was like this big, enlightened thing, and then kind of realizing that there was nothing missing from me. There was nothing, I didn't have any flaw, there was no fundamental thing wrong with me, that I was the same as that person. So I could stand with the enlightened person who I knew was enlightened, and it's kind of important to know that. I knew they were enlightened, and I could know between me, and it didn't matter about what anybody else said, was this feeling of there's no difference between me and that person. And I pretty much never lost that. It never changed, never wavered. And I had lots of insights, and like you, probably, you have an insight and you think, oh, I'm never going to forget this. And, I did, they pass, or what happens is they actually integrate. We don't forget them, they just become part of the inner landscape. So we integrate them, and then we, there's so much part of us that we're like, it's not a big deal. When you first have an insight, it stands out, and you think, I'm never going to forget that. But then it integrates, and then it's not so up in your mind anymore. But the enlightenment one, it wasn't really an insight. It wasn't like anything else I'd ever experienced. It came and it stayed, and it's never changed. And I never talked about it. I didn't talk about it for years. Like, it was from 1996 until 2011. I think I could count the number of people on one hand that I told. And it generally didn't go well. That was the other thing I discovered. It didn't go well when I talked about it, because suddenly, it's like becoming a vegetarian. Everybody turns into the protein police. You happen to mention you're enlightened, and everyone turns into the enlightenment police. And what I realized was that that's part of how I realized that it's a very personal thing, because what people were sort of judging me against was their list of, well, this is what enlightenment is, and you have to be this to be enlightened, which is fine for them. And it's like, off you go and get that. I got what I needed, I got what I wanted, I got what it meant to, my list got ticked off. And so mentioning it to people never went that well. They'd kind of go a bit weird about it. And then I wrote May a Noise, which was, the first chapter is that story, and then it goes on from there. And it was funny the way May a Noise came, because I had no interest, from my not so great experiences mentioning it to people that I happened to be enlightened, and them going a bit weird and going on the attack a bit. I kind of went, well, I don't need anyone to agree with me. I don't need anyone to validate what's going, I'm not saying it to people so that they'll agree with me or think I'm great or anything like that. I'm just saying it because it looked like it might have helped. It didn't. Or maybe it did, I don't know. So when the whole May a Noise started to come up in me, And it was keeping me awake at night. It was coming up that intensely. I was like, oh God, I don't want to write this. I don't want the hassle. I don't want people to be, giving me a hard time about this. But it kept kind of pressing itself, and then it came forward. And, I think I mentioned before, I wrote it. I made a deal with myself. Well, I'll write it, but I'm not showing anybody. I'm definitely not going to publish it. And then when I got to the end, it was like, oh, okay, I can publish it. And then when I did publish it, I was sure it was going to be a big backlash, and it was going to be very difficult for me. Thankfully, it wasn't. It's great. And it's been very, very nicely received, and it's lovely. And a similar thing is happening. Not about a book, but at the end of December, I wasn't thinking about doing anything. And then this idea came in to do a retreat, an Enlightenment Retreat, and now it's kind of galloping along at a pace. So I'm going to be doing a 21-day Enlightenment Retreat towards the end of the year in September on the island of Madiera. I'm calling it an island, but it is out in the middle of the ocean. But islands are the top of mountains, underwater mountains. So it's actually on the top of a mountain. And it's kind of, it's still very early days yet. I'm only telling you about it so you can let me know if you're interested. I'm not guaranteeing you're going to get enlightened or anything like that, but we'll be going after it. I keep getting this thing of Mrs. Bennet from Pride and Prejudice, where she'd say to her daughters, you must put yourself in the way of eligible young men so you can find a husband. Not that we're doing that, but we'll be putting ourselves in the way of enlightenment. And it's certainly not going to be me teaching you how to get enlightened, for sure. It won't be that. But we'll be in the energy of it. Because I know for me, being around enlightened people was very helpful. So I know being around me, if you're interested in enlightenment, that's going to be helpful for you. But it'll be a case of, finding out what it means to you, for you, finding out what's getting in the way. And we'll be moving around. There's a lot of places to walk on Madiera. I've never been to Madiera, I have to say, so we'll be discovering it together. But my idea, I'm getting kind of flashes of that we'll be walking from place to place. It won't be one venue, it won't be all like sitting down. I'm not going to help you with anything, meaning you'll have to organize your own accommodation, food, getting there, all that kind of stuff. It reminds me a little bit of the Barkley marathons in Tennessee, where not that you have to run a marathon, but it's very minimal infrastructure with the focus on enlightenment. Because it's great to go away somewhere and to retreat, but then you have to go back into life. So I kind of think, let's mash it up with life a bit, so that you have to walk a bit. You could drive. It could be like the Cannonball Run. If you don't like walking, that's fine. You can drive from one place to the other, and it'll be like, well, I'm going to be at this venue, we're going to do this thing. When we're there, there'll be quite a bit of meditation on, and we will stalk. I keep getting this impression of Elmer Fudd as well, we're going wabbit hunting. It's like we're going enlightenment hunting, I don't know if hunting is the right term for it, but we'll be stalking it, we'll be letting it stalk us, and it's an adventure, basically a 21-day adventure. You don't have to come for the whole thing, but everybody's got to start at the same time. I think that would be better. So I'll organize some sort of a form where you can sort of, expression of interest kind of thing, just so we have an idea of numbers. And I'll keep you posted. I'll let you know how it goes. Oh, I just realized I'm sure I fully answered that question. So it was, you could say it was a slow build up of over time, because I had I was 10 years hanging around with Barry Long, who was the person who was enlightened that I was, with. So 10 years of an association with him, reading his stuff, doing his meditations, going to see him whenever I could, whenever he gave talks or anything like that. So you could say it was a gradual thing, but when it actually happened, it was a bit like what I was talking about last week, with the pain train, pain, gap, more pain, and in the gap is where the things happened. You could say all of that led to the moment of enlightenment. But it wasn't with Barry, it was with another person. It had to kind of come sideways at it, So, unfortunately, it's like figuring out what the hook is for you, meaning what does it mean for me? Whatever it is, like I've been talking about enlightenment. So it's like, well, what was enlightenment? What does it mean for me? And what's the gap? Why am I not enlightened now? What's stopping me from being enlightened? And then kind of going, oh, okay, it's because of X, Y, and Z. And then you look at X, Y, and Z and begin to kind of focus on that, because that's the thing that's your hook. That's the thing that's keeping you on the hook. And by focusing on that, it'll get less. Now, I have to say, Barry never talked about any of that kind of stuff. In fact, he rarely talked about being enlightened other than to say that he was. But he said he was many things. He said he was a guru. He said he was a tantric master. He said he was the guru of the West. He said loads of stuff. So it's not like he just said this one thing, you know. So I think getting clear about it is helpful. Clear about what it is, and then clear about what you feel like why you're not that thing. And then seeing how you can dissolve that or find a way to not be that anymore. Because really it comes down to questions. You know, if you ask yourself the right questions, then you'll begin to turn on the machinery to get an answer. But you won't get an answer to a question you don't ask, you know. Okay, somebody else sent me a question. They say, I have a ringing in my left ear since a couple of months ago. I didn't pay too much attention before, but it's stronger now. And at the same time, my left wisdom tooth is coming out. So it seems like there's something to be seen or a meaning behind it, because it's all on the same side. What do you think? I'm also guessing about the timing. It seems symbolic that it appeared at the beginning of the year while I'm setting my intentions for this coming year. The first day of the month felt very energetic and powerful, and then these symptoms brought my energy a little bit down. So what they're talking about with the beginning of the year thing is what I got into last week about the setting, you know, each day being like a representation of the month for that year. So yeah, I mean, it's great to kind of look at things like that and to kind of think it's all, everything's significant. That's very helpful and very enjoyable. In terms of the left-sided thing, I've found, just as a working model, like, well, let me just say, back in the 80s into the 90s, Louise Hay had this book called You Can Heal Your Life. And it was like a little dictionary of ailments, you know. So if you had a problem with if you had a pain in your left little finger, you could go and look it up and go, oh, left little finger equals shame or equals whatever. And, you know, I've been around quite a few people who would use it like that. My mother loved dragging that book out, kind of like, oh, no, hang on, let me just check that, you know. In practice, I found it's not that, you know, one thing suits all. It's different. But what I have found is general tendencies. Now, I'm left-handed, right? So bear that in mind when I say this, because you would think that I would be predisposed to think that this in the other way, but I'm not. I have found that if you think of yourself as like moving forward, you know, taking a step forward, and your right hand, you're stepping forward on your right foot, and you're stepping forward from your left foot. So you're mid-stride, you know, right foot forward, right hand forward, left hand back a little bit, palm up like you're receiving. That's a very good way of thinking about it in terms of how things go with our body. We generally move forward on our right foot, for example, on our right leg, right foot. So let's say you get a fantastic promotion and then all of a sudden you've got a lot of right foot problems. Often that'll be because it's like you're come down too fast, you're not ready to take the next step, that kind of thing. Like, as a general rule, the further away it is, meaning the more in the periphery, the less important it is, or it's not so close to home. So there's a difference between having a right foot problem, right ankle problem, right big toe problem, and a right knee problem or a right hip problem. Very different. Right hip is much closer to home. It's like very personal. There's something about this new job. There's something about this new situation that you're stepping forward into that makes you uncomfortable. Then similarly, where we move off from is very important. So you move off from your left foot, left knee, left hip. That's your stability, that's your base, it's your home, you know. So often You know, if you've got problems going on your left side, it'll left leg and hip and knee and ankle and foot. It'll be to do with you're concerned or you don't feel secure, or there's something going on at home or in your home, whatever home means to you, and it'll show up on your left side. So, you know, if your partner is having an affair behind your back, you know it, but you don't know it, you'll feel it in your left foot. Or if you get a symptom in your left leg, foot, ankle, whatever, that'll be your way of getting your attention about it. In terms of our hands, we reach out and express ourselves with our right hand, and we receive with our left hand. And bear in mind, I'm left-handed here now, so you'd think I'd be saying the other way around, but you know, no. So you can think of it in those terms. If you've got a right-handed problem, it'll maybe to do with expression. If it's fingers, it'll be fine-tuning expression. If it's right shoulder, it'll be much closer to home, deep expression, deep power. It doesn't have to be creative. It could be any kind of thing that's to do with you expressing you. And as I say again, this has all just come from people, like just from working with people. I've just seen it over and over and over and over again. It's not like I made it up. It's not like I read it somewhere. It's just what I've observed. And it's kind of similar with our eyes and our ears. Right eye projects, left eye receives. Right ear projects, left ear receives. So with this person, ringing in their ear, it'll be to do with, you know, ringing in the ear can be trying not to hear something sometimes. Again, these are all very general because it's all very personal and it's all very specific to each person. There's not one size fits all, but these are the sort of things that spring to mind. Something not hearing about, to do with receiving maybe, or to do with, maybe to do with home, not so much in the head though. Teeth can be to do with money. I always think of money to do with teeth, you know, like if you have dreams where your teeth are all crumbling, that's often like to do with fears about money. So back, wisdom tooth coming through. It's on the left, it's not on the right. Could be, I'd be mostly guessing here, but it would be, you know, something to do with wisdom coming through, coming up into wisdom. Combined with the ear thing, it'd be like there's wisdom coming through, but I don't really want to hear it. I don't want to, you know, I don't want to see who I am or hear who I am, or I don't want to hear my deeper calling, deeper voice. These are all, I could be completely wrong. Like these are just things that are coming to me as you sort of add them up. Particularly if you include the timing of it, as the person says. Comes at the beginning of the year. What does that mean? Why then and not any other time? That kind of makes me, particularly when the person's setting bold intentions for the year, and then suddenly it's like, you know, now I can't hear, or now there's a covering sound on my ear that makes it hard for me to hear, and now my wisdom, I'm having, you know, wisdom issues, or wisdom teeth, you know. I mean, they're called wisdom teeth, but it's more to do with growth, you know, and that we're coming into growth. So those are the kind of things I'd be thinking about. But yeah, if you keep that model in mind, you can figure it out for yourself. Try it out, you know, stepping forward onto the right foot, right hand forward, left hand receiving. Everything goes forward on the right and we receive everything on the left. Generally, as I say, that's what I've found. Farm news, this isn't really farm news. This is more just like John news. I've just been to the dentist and my face isn't fully back online yet. And it just really struck me how, like, going to the dentist is a really good example of how contrived civilization, or the idea of civilization, is. Because, like, I had a lot of dental trauma when I was a kid. I was unlucky enough to end up being with a dentist that was later disbarred or categorized as a sadist. So, you know, my mother entrusted me to his care, and it didn't go well for me. So going to the dentist is particularly traumatic for me. And like two things, it's like on the one hand, all the meditation really comes into play, because my whole body wants to run, jump up and run away and just get out of the situation. But then I was able to, and I am able to when I go to the dentist, to just keep letting it go, keep letting the tension go, and to be incredibly relaxed, all things considered. But the construction of society or civilization around where you can't, particularly as a man, I find it, you can't kind of go, I'm terrified, you know, don't hurt me. I'm sure they'd be okay if I said that, but I just find it very difficult. The only way I can kind of get through is to put all my focus on being easy, breathing, and relaxed. And then afterwards, just really noticing how traumatized my body feels and how I want to cry and all these kind of things. Now I'm, you know, taking care of myself and being very gentle with myself, doing all the sort of things that I know to do. But it's just really, I think it's just a great like metaphor for this thing of, you know, we can kind of say, oh, you know, be kind to everybody because you never know what they're going through. But, you know, like I've been around town, I've been doing things, I've done a bit of grocery shopping, done a few other bits and pieces, and it's just a really good example of, on the inside, I'm kind of dealing with my being, you know, like having any kind of thing done to your body, like I'm still, the Novocaine is still wearing off, so I'm still like, it's not, my jaw's fully not working again. And I can feel how traumatic that is. And I can feel my little body like going, oh, what happened? And yet it's like, from to the outside, I'm sure if you went back and interviewed everybody that I just interacted with, that I'll be like, really? I would never have guessed. I mean, I did mention it to the guy who was doing the grocery stuff for me. But other than that, they wouldn't have noticed. And they certainly wouldn't have noticed how emotionally disturbing I found the whole thing, you know? So I think that's just a good example of like why it's so important to be kind to people, because you just never know what's going on for them. Because you don't, I mean, okay, I just went to the dentist, and not to trivialize that, but you know, like that's a small thing compared to some of the other things that people are dealing with, that on the surface, you'd never know. You just never know. So yeah, be kind. Be kind. Now, let's have a look at some of the memes on the Further Emergence Instagram feed. The first one says, and yet here you are, despite the darkness you've experienced, choosing to spread light everywhere you go. If you've been through a lot of darkness, it's very hard to give yourself credit for the fact that you got through it and that you're not passing it on. Because being in a lot of darkness is traumatic, and it dysregulates your nervous system, it changes the way you think, and it puts you in survival mode. And in many ways, part of you is still stuck in the trauma until you can work it out. Well, while all that is going on, it's very difficult to acknowledge and see your beautiful spirit coming through in the fact that you're not passing it on. Now, there's a certain amount of reaction, like promises you make, I will never be that kind of person. That's a different thing. But there's so many people who pass it on. You know, that's where the idea of generational trauma comes from. It's like one generation passes on to the next. It's like a big long tailback of one car rear-ending the next, rear-ending the next, rear-ending the next. Are you going to be the one to put the brakes on? And it's very hard to, in the course of just surviving and dealing with the trauma, and that part of you is still stuck in the trauma, to take a moment and go, I'm not passing this on. Not a conscious thing, but an observation. I'm actually not passing this on. I just am spreading light to, you know, in using this kind of dual darkness and light kind of perspective. I'm just spreading light. I'm not sure that's a conscious thing. It's just something I'm doing, and it's very difficult to acknowledge that, but it's so important to acknowledge it, because that's your nature. Because when you've been around a lot of darkness, often the darkness tries to get inside you, and it's like, you made this happen. You're fundamentally flawed. There's something wrong with you. That's why this dark, bleak stuff happened to you. It's you. That's all the time the battle of somebody who's been around a lot of darkness. So it's really important to kind of go, well, considering the terrible things that have happened, and I'm sure, like you, I've had terrible things happen. I'm sure you've had as well. In the face of that, to kind of take a moment to go, I'm not passing it on. There's something deep in me that's quite light and that's shining through in spite of it all. And by claiming that and acknowledging that, it helps it come through a bit more, and it helps in the whole process of dealing with the trauma and dealing with the exposure to that dark kind of heaviness from the beginning. This is from Lao Tzu, Tao Being, Tao Te Ching. Without the pretense of certainty, it is easy to be compassionate. This is powerful and subtle, because the things we are certain about are often obscure to us. We kind of think, well, I am tolerant, I'm not a racist, I'm not homophobic, I'm not sexist, and so on. All of which bear scrutiny, by the way. But, we're kind of certain we're not those things. But those are not the things that stop us being compassionate. It's the whole idea of certainty, of like, it's probably most easy to see it with family members who you've known your whole life, and you've got pretty, good idea of who they are. And then they want to open a new hairdressing business, or they're getting into another relationship. And then you're like, well, I know how that's going to go. You know that feeling? Or they want money from me for what? Gee, I don't know about that. I know the way the last 5 ventures they started went. That's where the certainty comes in. But even more when you zoom in and you're having a conversation with them and they say something that you've heard them say 100 times before. You're like, oh God, that's so, they are so this way. And that's where the certainty comes in. It's very subtle certainty about people. And that's not to say that you just ignore your experience and you open yourself wide to people who are abusive. Oh, I don't mean that at all. But it's an internal thing where you're continually preening yourself of certainty. That helps you be compassionate. When you don't know anything about the other person, other people, other groups of people, where you have you preen yourself of prejudices, preen yourself of, well, that person is from this particular group of people, so I'm pretty sure, and you've got a little checklist of certainties about this person you've never met before. When you can let go of certainties as much as possible, I know it's not easy to let them go, but if you make it your intention to let them go, you've got a much better chance of it. It frees you up to be more compassionate, and that ultimately makes you feel better. I'm not saying do this because it's really altruistic and being good to all men. Yeah, sure, but mostly because it makes me feel good, makes you feel good. The more you let go of certainty, the better you feel, because it allows your natural compassion to arise. And this phrase, without the pretense of certainty, because it is a pretense because you never really know, without the pretense of certainty, it's easy to be compassionate. And it is much easier to be compassionate. So yes, let that one go. Let the certainty go, so the compassion can come up. This is written by Najwa Zebian. When you build your home in other people, you give them the power to make you homeless. It's so powerful, isn't it? And it's so true. It's so well written, this little encapsulated thing. because we do that, don't we? We kind of build a home in somebody else. We put it outside ourselves, not just people, but particularly with people. And Hollywood and romance and everything kind of encourages you to do that. But the downside is that you're actually giving that person the power to make you homeless. And how you're homeless is because you've looked outside yourself for something that is actually inside yourself. Because if you feel deep, profound love in the presence of another person, that's beautiful. But where do you feel it? You don't feel it in their body. You don't feel it anywhere else except inside you. So it kind of follows that it's inside you all the time. And this person is just helping you to access it. So doesn't it make sense to figure out how to access it when there's nobody else around? Then I'm just with you because I like being with you, because I enjoy it, not because I need you to help me access these feelings inside me. I'm just with you because I love being around you. You're great fun. I love your personality. I love your energy. But I don't need anything from you. I don't need you to be here. I just enjoy it. That's very different to the pain you feel when the person's not there and you feel cut off. And the sad thing is you're cut off from something that's actually inside you all the time. It's there. It's like having a room in your house that's full of beautiful, wonderful things, and you feel like it's outside somewhere else. And you're wandering around inside your house going, oh, I miss that room. Where's that room? I'm never going to find that room again. And you're passing the doorway the whole time. You're walking by, you're probably crying outside the doorway going, oh, I miss that room. And it's right there. And it's just so close, And the difference I have found is that when you're with the person, it's like a bank of switches go on, like when you see them put all the switches on, put the switches on, and it's like everything lights up and it's like fireworks and it's like, yay! And you sort of feel like, oh, well, that's how I find it. I have to find those switches. But when you're finding it yourself, it's like those switches, the auto activation mode for those switches is they're sliders. They're not switches. It's not a on and off kind of thing. It's like slowly, slowly, slowly it comes up. And slowly you feel like you're deeply in love, profoundly in love with somebody, except there's nobody around and there's no external focus. It's just, oh, I figured out how to bring the lights up myself. That's possible. It's totally possible. I've done it, and if I can do it, you can do it. The next one says, it's okay to be happy with a calm life. This is particularly relevant now when there's a lot of push to feel like you should have a disturbed life. You should be disturbed. And it's kind of mixing this idea of knowing what's going on with being disturbed. If you know what's going on, you should be really upset about it. And that overlooks the fact of, yes, you can know what's going on, you can have your heart broken by what's going on in the world, and yet you can still have a calm life. I understand like there's a big push to kind of, if you're silent, you're complicit and all this kind of thing. And there's a certain amount of truth in that, and there's a certain amount of trying to wake people up. But guilting people is not the way to wake people up, I don't think. It's important to know what's going on, to do what you're moved to do, and then come back into having a calm life. Because having a calm life, if that's what you want, is a very helpful and powerful thing to do. To not be asleep, to not be an ostrich, to know what's going on, but to also know that it's not going on in your lovely little life, and to not let it ruin your life now, to not cry at night, to not let the heartbreak become more than it is, because it's very important to feel the heartbreak. It's very important to feel the suffering of other people that are around. That's part of being human. It's a beautiful thing. But if it's not happening right in front of you, then don't let it ruin your beautiful life. Don't let it ruin your beautiful presence, your beautiful experience of everything. If you're moved to do something, then go and do it. Don't sit on the couch crying. Go and do it if you're moved to do it. But if you're not moved to do it, then face that as well. And be okay with that. Because different people are wired differently. Not everybody is moved to go and do the things. If you are, great, go and do those things. But don't let it ruin your lovely life. Don't let it ruin the moment. Don't let it draw you out of the moment. Because then you're caught up in it beyond what's necessary. And when you're taken out of the moment, you're caught up in the washing machine of it. And it's not helpful. You're not helping anybody. You're just ruining your day, feeling like you're doing something, and you're not. The only thing you're doing is ruining your day. As I say, make the distinction between external action and internal action. Externally, do what you're moved to. If you want to protest, go and protest. If you want to go to wherever the problem is, go there and do that. If you want to stand on a corner and tell everybody about it, do that. Just don't let it ruin your day. Don't let it take you out of who you are on the inside. As I said many times before, your mind doesn't care what you think about. It just cares that you're thinking. Because when you're thinking, your mind feels like it's got an existence. Okay, but you're not your mind. So don't let it take over. Don't let it make you miserable. Don't let it take you away from the sweetness of your being. Because it is okay to have a calm life. It's quite okay to have a calm life. And the more you are okay with having a calm life, the more you get to see how maybe you caused some drama for yourself because you didn't realize that you liked having a calm life. It's pretty depressing when we realize, oh, I've been creating all this drama because I don't want to get bored. And having a calm life is kind of dull in comparison to all this exciting emotional drama. When you kind of get to that point and go, oh, maybe I don't want the drama, then you can let it go and you can settle into, yeah, you know what, it's okay to have a calm life. The next one says, may your day be full of magic and may you not be too busy to see it. That's the thing, not being too busy to see it. Because it's very easy to miss the magic. It's very easy to discount it. We don't want to. We don't want to like deny it or anything like that, but we just get used to everything. Everything just becomes familiar. So it's kind of like having to go back to the way that children see things or the way you saw things when you were a child. It's like if you are going to a new place, you notice everything, the petrol station, the shops, the trees, whatever. You know, if you think about your last trip home, you were thinking about stuff, you didn't really, unless something was a big change, you probably didn't notice it. Well, it's kind of the same with magic. You have to make a point of looking out for it because it's kind of easy to miss because magic is quite, it's not Disney. It's not like sparkles and rainbows. It is when you get right into it, but on the surface it just looks really ordinary. It doesn't look like much at all. A person that you've met many times, they just smile in a different kind of way, or the sun hits something in a particular way, and the momentum of our mind is just like, well, that's just that thing, I've seen that a million times. You miss it. You miss there's something new happening. So it's cultivating this sense of wonder and of making yourself see things for the first time. It begins to get you to open up to being able to see magic and stopping that busyness and like, oh, I haven't got time for magic, What else have you got time for, What do you think you're going to be thinking about on your deathbed? All the jobs you got done, how you ticked off your to-do list? No, you're going to be having those flashes of those magical moments because that's what you'll be going into, is the realm of magic and deeper and beyond. It's the mystery. So grab these precious moments of magic. Let go any preconceived ideas you have about magic. I mean, it's a loaded word. It's a bit like, oh, well, what did magic ever do? And there's such terrible things going on in the world and all this kind of stuff. All of which is true, but magic is so important. I don't know what other word to use for it, but it is this special little instance that makes your heart sing, it makes your heart expand. You recognize it, you go, there's something real going on there, something more real than this coming through. And if that's not worth claiming and focusing on, I don't know what is. All right, well, that's all I have for you this time. I trust you're well, I trust you're of good cheer. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.